Welcome to the You Love to See It podcast, coverage of your Seattle Mariners. Hello and welcome again to the You Love to See It podcast, coverage of your Seattle Mariners. I am Jake, as always. You can find me on Twitter at Mariners Jerseys. You can find me all episodes of this podcast on either YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, or Amazon Music. If you're watching on YouTube, as always, leave a like, subscribe. It's free, helps the channel a lot. And if you're on streaming platforms, you can leave a 5-star review if you really want to. You can follow the show as well. All those things help a lot. Today's guest, we have Ben Ranieri, who is the mastermind behind the Sea Level Substack, where you can find both written and audio content. Ben is a very talented writer and overall mind in the Mariners space, so I'm very excited to have him on to get to know him a bit more, pick his brain about the very exciting last few days that we've had here in the Mariners fandom. So yeah, Ben, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, man. I really appreciate you having me.
Yeah, and we'll all start the same way. I kind of start with everyone else, especially the new guests who have been on here for the first time, just kind of getting to know you and your background for how you became a Mariners fan and got into the Mariners space in general. So kind of start from the beginning. How did you become a baseball fan? I know you're a baseball player, so obviously we'll get into that. And then how did the Mariners become your team as well?
So I would say from the very, very beginning, I grew up with a family full of Yankees and Braves fans for the most part. I grew up in Boise, Idaho. So Yankees and Braves fans in my family, kind of in the very early days, I would say I was more of a Derek Jeter fan than a Yankees fan. Dad, very influential in my life, is a huge Yankees fan, but it was difficult for me to watch them, and I love the fact I just basically started, and I attribute a lot of my Mariners fandom to the very early days of Felix Hernandez. I basically started by watching Felix Hernandez, and I would watch them. Um, I would watch them all the time, but then I really got drawn in by Felix specifically. Um, Always was tuning in when he was taking the mound. And then from there, it just kind of grew, and um, that's kind of the local team per se in Boise, being that we got Root Sports on our local cable package. So that's kind of what I was drawn to. And then I think I was 12, and I won the Mariners Sports fan of the year from Idaho or whatever. So they flew me out there and got to walk out on the red carpet and stuff like that, which I guess I haven't really ever talked about that on my show or anything like that. But yeah, I was like 12, and by that point, I was fully bought in um, on being a Mariners fan. So that's just kind of how it went for me.
So where's the connection with the Yankees and Braves within your household? How did that begin? Are they like from the East Coast or?
No, no, I think it's just simply I mean the Braves. It was, I think, for the people in my family that are Braves fans, um, just simply they were the national team. Like you could watch them, in the 70s and 80s and 90s and all that. You could watch them on TBS and stuff like that. And so I think that's how those people specifically fell in love with them. For the Yankees portion of it, we're also Packers fans, and I think it was just kind of the teams. I'm sure it was just those were the two teams in the 50s and 60s that my grandpa gravitated towards as being the national, um, very national brands. And so that my dad was a Yankees fan and I'm a Packers fan, but I didn't adopt the Yankees part of it. Instead, I gravitated over towards the Mariners side of things.
Nice. And when you were invited, did you get to meet Felix, or were there any other players that you were able to meet that you had a good experience with, or
Um,
was that experience as a whole, as especially as a 12-year-old, I'd imagine that was pretty mind-blowing to
oh my God.
to walk into
Oh
T-Mobile
my
Park,
God.
which I guess at the time was Safeco, and just yeah, that has to be
No,
insane.
it was fantastic. I don't remember any players that I specifically met. I don't remember, I didn't meet Felix or anything like that. Um, but I remember Rick Riz. sat me down and he talked to me for a little while, which was really cool. I met like Dave Sims and Mike Flowers, mostly like people in the root sports category, I guess. And then I remember oddly, they were playing the Rangers, and this was when the Rangers, keep in mind, the Rangers were like elite. That they had um, Nelson Cruz and Josh Hamilton in his peak, and Ian Kinsler, and all those guys, and Ron Washington was their manager. Remember, he stopped over and talked to us a little bit, but that's pretty much it as far as I can remember. And then obviously, I got to like walk out on the red carpet before the game, which was as a 12-year-old, man, that was the world. So it's pretty crazy to think that now 12, 13 years later that this is kind of um where I'm at now, and that definitely played a pivotal role in kind of my ascension and just love for the game and love for the Mariners.
And so when did you start playing baseball? Because we'll get into kind of your time at Linfield and whatnot, but where did that begin? Did it start probably not at 12 if you ended up playing in college? Usually it starts a bit younger than that if you get to that level.
I mean, I was playing from like 4 or 5 t-ball all the way up into high school and through college. So I started really young, and it was basically I was I would say until about high school or 8th grade or so when it became like my favorite. Or it was always like kind of my favorite sport, but it really became like my focal point. Probably in 8th grade or freshman year of high school. I played all three of the major ones, football and basketball, growing up, and so. Um, but baseball really took center stage for me, and it was the one that I just really gravitated towards. So yeah, since 5, starting up with t-ball, kind of the standard baseball route.
Gotcha. Is there any specific parts of the game that really is what set it apart for you from the other sports you were playing?
Uh, I think it was just like I was always a very much like and I think that's why I have no problem covering it now. I was always very much like the kid that like was totally okay with being at the baseball field or just around the yard at all times. I just loved being out there in the summer. Like that's what I did with my summers, and that's what I still do. My summers, I always tell people like I don't have a lot of other. Um, I wouldn't say I coach also, but I wouldn't say that I don't golf. I don't ski. Obviously, it's not a summer thing, but I baseball's pretty much always been my summer thing, and so I was always just a kid that just never wanted to leave the yard, and it's just kind of how I am now. I consume a lot of baseball content. I'm always kind of in on stuff, and yeah, just overall kind of fell in love with my summers, just kind of revolving around baseball as a hobby and just as an overall passion, I would say.
So I've gotten this question quite a few times before. I don't think I've ever actually asked it to someone then. Do you have like a Mount Rushmore of baseball movies that like you kind of grew up on? Because I know The
Ooh,
Sandlot was super influential for me, but people kind of hate it, which
okay.
is a bit annoying that some people kind of rag on The Sandlot a bit. But yeah, that's what I was raised on.
Yeah, no, I love Mount Rushmore questions. So I would say, in no particular order, Mount Rushmore of baseball movies. Um, I would say number one, my kind of I've always had a kind of a passion for like my family's kind of always joked around that like I would GM someday or a great GM, which is like obviously that's not going to happen. But I've always had a passion for like player acquisition and stuff like that. So Moneyball always held a very. I do understand some of the caveats with that movie, but that's definitely probably my the one that I've always gravitated towards the most. And then the one that I think is just purely the best is probably Bull Durham. Those two are undoubtedly on my Mount Rushmore. Then outside of that, I do like The Sandlot. For me personally, I'll go Major League as
Yeah.
well. Those three are very solidly on there, and then I'm gonna go off the grid a little bit. I really, really like the and I'm bad with movie names sometimes, and there's a lot of like Rookie of the Year, but there's a lot of names that are similar to this one. I believe it's called The Rookie.
Okay.
Um,
The one with
it's
Kevin
it's
Costner,
like a
right? Or is
the
that with
one
him?
with Kevin Costner, yeah, and Field of Dreams also. I have a hard time. It's between those two.
Okay.
Um, but The Rookie, the scene where he calls his wife from the payphone. He's the high school baseball coach that his team basically gets hit. They say if they go on a winning streak and they win state or whatever it was, that he would have to try out, and he ends up making it. And it's a true story, and eventually makes it to the big league. So that one has always held a special place in my heart. So that's probably what I would go with: Moneyball, Bull Durham, The Rookie, and Major League is probably my Mount Rushmore. But yeah, no, big baseball movie fan for sure.
Yeah, and I feel like I don't want to get canceled here, but I haven't seen like Bull Durham or The Rookie yet, so I need to put those on my
Oh
list. I
man,
feel horrible saying that because I know they are like the pinnacles of baseball
oh man,
movies. If I were to answer, I would probably say Sandlot has to be there. I literally grew up on the Sandlot. My dad was a super big fan. Um, so that was actually my favorite movie growing up for a long time until I watched like actual good movies. Um, and then I would say Moneyball too. And I honestly would say the book is definitely better than the movie itself. I've didn't
I
even
agree.
know the issues of the movie until I saw people talking about it like few months ago. I think someone made a big like list of the all the baseball movies ranked or something. I don't know if it was like Baseball is Dead, that channel or something. But they kind of went over it briefly, and it kind of ruined the movie a little bit for me. But the book itself was really good. But at the end of the day, there's nothing like the Hatterberg scene where he hits the walk off and the music and
Yeah,
you know looking at the Billy Bean. Who
it's
was it?
fantastic.
Yeah, so good. Gotta say Major League Two, not the second one, just Major League in general. Gosh, I
Okay.
don't know what the fourth one would be. I guess like 48 was a pretty good like biopic movie about Jackie Robinson. I feel like that's a really basic answer, but yeah, comment down below what your favorite, your Mount Rushmore for baseball movies are. It's always a fun topic, but to get back
Yeah,
into,
man. The next time I'm gonna hold you to this. The next time that we talk,
I'll watch Bull Durham.
I'm making it a requirement for you that you have to watch Bull Durham because
Yeah.
it truly is like all timer. And there's some like iconic things that happen in that movie. So that I could give you one that you absolutely have to watch. It absolutely has to be that one.
Yeah, next time we talk, I will give you a full, it has to be like a multi-minute synopsis of Bull Durham, so I didn't just read it off Wikipedia. And
Mm.
it'll prove. I'll even take a pop quiz if I need to. We'll do that. But to get off the movie stuff, we'll go back into more about you. So you went to Bishop Kelly High School, and it looked your stats are online. 155 plate appearances. You hit 274, pretty damn good if I say so myself. So if you were to scout yourself from high school, who what would you say about who you were as a player at that time in your life?
God. As a high school player, I was basically like I wasn't gonna strike out very much. I had like, and this is something that we'll probably get into, but I just basically had zero power. Zero power, and that was a lot of the reason for me eventually going to driveline as a collegiate player. At zero power, just basically was trying to put the ball in play. I could run a little bit. My game was basically predicated on I was uh, I was a pretty good I was a really good defensive center fielder, and that was my game. That's the part of my game that I really prided myself on. But definitely, like I was gonna maybe hit two doubles a year at that point, and I was basically all singles besides that, and I was gonna go get it out in center field, and that was basically it. Um, that yeah, as a high school player, um, yeah, just a lot of putting the ball in play and running was basically my game.
So you said you went to Driveline, so that occurred while you were in college, or was it like
While I was
before
in
then?
college.
Okay. Which
While I was in
which
college, yeah.
year did that occur?
That was before my junior year, so that would have been the summer of 2019. I went summer of 2018 and 2019.
Okay.
Driveline in the very, very early stages of their hitting. Uh, they've always been well known for pitching, and obviously at that point, like the Trevor Bauers of the world were kind of front and center in terms of like the revolutionizing the pitching part of it for Driveline, but the hitting part of it definitely was secondary. And so I would say I was on the earlier stages of at least the hitting part of Driveline. But yeah, 2018 and 2019 when I was spent summers there.
So you attended Linfield University in Oregon, and you pursued a major in sports management as well. Your stats are also available if you want to take a look at them for Linfield as well. So we're going to go over
Oh
those
God, please no.
briefly. So you played in 37 games. This is for the varsity. I don't think anything other than that is available. But in 37 games over the 4 year span, you ended with a career slash line of 245, 321, and 651, which is over the Mendoza line, I will say. So awesome.
Yes, it is.
Um, so first of all, you did hit two dingers in 2020. You did say that you didn't have any power, and you said you went to Driveline before the 2020 season. So the correlation
Yes.
seems to be there. But as far as the two home runs go, can you kind of walk me through the like how those were or what happened in those?
Yeah. So obviously, like I played a little bit my freshman and sophomore year, and then going into my junior year, kind of funny enough, as we're on a Mariners podcast, I was essentially like to start the year, I was in a platoon
Okay.
in center field. So I was hitting against lefties. Um, and I obviously spent a lot of time at Driveline. I actually dislocated my shoulder that fall. And so I was I had 2 years left and I didn't get it fixed. I was just like, I'm gonna ride it out, see what I can do here. And yeah, man, like went to Driveline, absolutely think nothing but the world of those people there and what they helped me with. And yeah, I actually was incredibly sick, and I had just kind of blossomed my way into the starting lineup. Not a platoon guy anymore. And I was leading off a game, and I believe it was the second pitch of the game. I was incredibly sick. I could barely end up in the dugout. But I hit about the farthest ball that I've ever. It was the farthest ball that I've ever hit in my life. It was a leadoff homer, which was pretty cool. So like basically the only two cool things that I ever did in baseball were hit a leadoff homer, and then my other one that year before the year was tragically cut short to COVID was a game tying 3 run homer. So at least both my homers in my career were cool ones, I guess. A game tire in the ninth and a leadoff one was my first one. Yeah, didn't do a lot of cool things, but I guess I can say that the couple of cool things that I did do were the couple homers that I did hit were cool and special, at least to me.
Well, another thing you did that was pretty cool is you had a home run robbing catch against Pacific University. So can you kind of walk me through the development of that play and how that all went down?
Yeah. So like I said, center field defense that was always my thing. That was for the most part why I was out there. Um, I had worked on a lot the summer before, like for any outfielders or baseball coaches listening. I had worked on like getting my. We had a chain link fence essentially. It was covered up by a screen, but a lot of times to rob a homer, you get your foot in the fence to kind of give you a little bit of a boost. So I'd worked on that a ton, just kind of messing around NBP and stuff like that, working on getting my foot in the fence, kind of giving myself a little bit of an extra boost to go up and get it. And it was in the left center gap at our park at Linfield, and it was just like I would like to think it was a 99.9% route efficiency. Like it was just kind of like luck. It was just kind of like luck. I had a really good route on this ball and my foot in the fence and just like timed it perfectly. And got my forearm up over the fence and brought it back. So that was probably the only other really cool thing that I did. But that one was definitely a special memory for sure.
Would you say it was close to or better than the Julio robbery in Baltimore this past season?
Um, no, no, not even anywhere, nowhere close to Julio. But in my mind at the time, it was pretty sweet.
Yeah, I
Um,
would imagine.
but obviously, nothing can ever top um, Julio Rodriguez, obviously. But that was in my mind at the time. It was pretty damn cool. It felt pretty good.
Yeah, I would imagine so. It probably felt like that when you like came down and your feet hit the dirt and you see the balls in your glove. You're probably like, I am the man right now. I would
Oh yeah,
imagine
oh
huge
yeah,
confidence
100%.
booster. So I'm gonna move on to more of your writing stuff now because that's ultimately where you're at today. So it appears that pretty much right after you graduated, you started doing articles for SODO Mojo, which it's funny because it feels like every guest I talked to started with SODO Mojo. Everyone funneled through that. And then in June of 2022, you shifted to doing articles for Sports Illustrated. I'm curious, where did the opportunity to do articles for such a prestigious company like Sports Illustrated happen for you? Who reached out to you for that?
So so I started with Soto Mojo. I reached out to Chris O'Day. Shout out to Chris. I actually talked to him earlier this week a little bit, first time in a while. So super grateful for Soto Mojo allowing me to kind of get my foot in the door. And it's funny because uh, I mean at the time I don't think that my writing was I liked doing it a lot, but I don't think that my writing was necessarily fantastic. Um, but it was good enough, and I wrote some things that ended up generating. I was starting to get better at it and better at it as I was at Soto, or at least I felt like I was. And I actually got a random. I had no Twitter following at the time, really, but I got a random at an article about Julio that some pretty good numbers on Soto Mojo, and I got a random DM that I honestly thought was fake at the time. It was a DM from a PR person at I believe it's Blue Chip, which was at the time they were running Julio's merch line, and so they had read my article, and this was before he had made his debut. So this was in I want to say February or yeah February or March of 2022. They were in spring training at the time.
Okay.
It was actually right after he hit that inside the Parker um, in spring training before he made his debut. And so she reached out to me and was like, "Would you like to do an interview with Julio?" And I was like, "Yeah, I would love to do that." So, and it was basically an interview focused on his brand and his clothing brand. So I got to ask him some questions about just baseball in general, then um, some questions about his brand, uh, his clothing line, and then kind of post that for kind of a mutual benefit sort of thing, a benefit for them and a benefit for me. And then I got in touch with once I found out that Ty and I didn't really know Ty and Colby at the time very well, but I got a chance to kind of reach out to them and I was like, hey, if you guys are doing this, if you're doing uh, the Sports Illustrated thing and you need extra writers, I would love to do it. I'll do it for nothing, basically. Um, and yeah, they I think I was interested in the fact that I'd interviewed Julio in the past, quite frankly. Um, and that was kind of just how I got my foot in the door with them was just kind of reaching out and networking and knowing Ty. a little bit and kind of going back and forth with him, and we had some phone conversations. And yeah, just ended up getting on with them and starting my more serious writing career that summer of 2022.
Yeah, and so you did Sports Illustrated until September of 2022, and then you pivoted to starting doing your Substack Sea Level, which you're doing now. So, was there anything that spurred that change from going to Sports Illustrated to being just on your own, doing your own thing? And I guess, how do you feel about that change? Is it more fulfilling for you at this point?
And so, without bagging on them too much, Sports Illustrated, that that subsection of Sports Illustrated kind of started to was falling apart essentially. And obviously, if anybody that's listening has seen kind of the downturn of Sports Illustrated in general, and just kind of where a lot of the um, sports writing companies are going, they kind of see the writing on the wall. And um, Kai and Colby had left, and I could kind of see the writing on the wall that they were not super interested in um, a small market team like the Mariners, essentially. So they stopped basically. They basically halted our site right before the playoffs, which was it was unfortunate for sure. But I wanted to keep the kind of mojo of what I had going. I had a press pass, so I was in the locker room and in the clubhouse for I would say a pretty decent majority of second half of 2022. And so I wanted to keep that going, and I didn't really know how. And there's a Packers writer that I really liked that started his own Substack. I didn't even really know what that was, but I had subscribed to him, and I thought it was cool. So I just started it just because I like having a voice, no matter how big or small. I didn't really anticipate anything coming of it. I just started it because I enjoyed writing, and it felt kind of wrong to stop writing at the time that the Mariners were completely ascending. Um, so I started it in early October of 2022, and it's certainly fulfilling. It's probably one of my the best decisions that I've ever made was to just go ahead and take the leap and just start doing that. I didn't really have another option. Um, but yeah, I just kind of decided to go that route and didn't really think much of it at the time, to be honest. So
Is there any specific article that you've written up until this point that you're most proud of on your specific Substack?
um my subs on so I would say with Sports Illustrated, kind of niche was that I knew some people at Driveline that were willing to always talk baseball with me. I maintained a really good connection with them, and I still do to this day. So I had written a couple like swing analysis articles on Ty France and Jesse Winker at the time, and then some Robbie Ray pitching stuff that I kind of broke down. So that connection and those connections were really good, and so I've been pretty like it was really cool getting to talk with those guys about like JP Crawford, specifically talking to them. As far as I know, I think it's the only article out there specifically from Driveline on JP. There's JP's talked about it pretty openly, his relationship with Driveline. So that one was pretty cool. I did a Q&A with one of his hitting trainers there, a Q&A style article. But I would say probably my favorite thing that I've ever written was a feature article on Aaron Goldsmith. Um, it's my favorite conversation that I've ever had, literally in my life. He is incredibly engaging. I talked with him for say probably talked to him for 45 minutes pre-show, just about like his career and my career, and he was incredibly gracious and kind and helpful, um, and giving me some direction and talking about his career and kind of some of the parallels between his career and my career. Obviously, he's far above me, but some of the things that he shared were fantastic. And then we got into the actual show part of it, and I ended up just writing a feature article about his path and his journey. And this was kind of right before he decided to stay on as a broadcaster. This was in the, I want to say, November or December of 2022. And then I think I posted it in like January or something like that. So that one stands out above the rest. That was such a fun article to write, mainly because Aaron's just so fun to talk to,
Mm.
and his story is fascinating. So that's probably my favorite one that I've ever written on Sea Level for sure.
Yeah, I'll say it now and anytime I can. First, Aaron, 100% in my opinion, the best commentator in the game at this point. I don't think there's really anyone close. And two, he's always going to be on my number one of like bucket list podcast guest. So hopefully one day that'll happen because I saw him on the Locked On Mariners podcast, and yeah, it seemed to really exude that same thing that you just said of just how personable. And God, I can't imagine the amount of stories that we haven't even tapped into yet, even with all the interviews he's probably done. So that would be super fun. But I guess you said you had a media pass for a while. Do you still have one at this point, or is it kind of just since you're on your own now? Has that changed?
I'm hoping to get. Last summer, I just quite frankly didn't have time to get over there. I think I went to maybe 3 games last summer. I live in Missoula, Montana, and I coach over here during the summer, so it's really hard for me to get over there really at all until kind of August territory. So I didn't really even pursue getting one last year just because I wasn't going to be over there. I'm planning on um, potentially even maybe moving there, moving over to the Seattle area here in the next 6 to 8 months. I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. But yeah, no, that's kind of next for me. Is I would like to try to get in the clubhouse, and it's just a different. You just get a different context to everything. You get a context that you just can't get just watching on TV. You get a context and a feel of kind of the vibe of things and the preparation that goes into that. And so, yeah, definitely for 2024. Um, if they'll have someone from a small or ish Substack in the clubhouse, I would definitely love to um, get back over there and get my press pass stuff rolling again and get some content flowing from that. So yeah, that's kind of on the docket for 2024 if at all possible.
Do you have from your time when you did have one? Do you have any like what's your favorite moment or story from when you were either in the press box or in the clubhouse? Doesn't have to be some big insight thing into like the inner workings. It could be funny. Like it's really up to you at that point.
Um, yeah, so I think I mean it's really cool just to in the locker room in general.
Mm.
That's really cool. But I would say a specific story. Um, so they had a doubleheader against the Angels in July of 2022, I believe it was. And I walked in to the press box. I was pretty thoroughly obsessed with like squeezing every drop out of the time that I was there. So I'd basically be the first one there. Um, and I walked in, and I'd been there before. I'd been in the press box before, and there's like 3 long like tables set up right in the entryway of the press box, and I was like a little confused. Like, okay, is there an event going on or something like that? I didn't really know. Wasn't thinking very deeply into it. But then all these Japanese writers started filtering in, and I was like, okay, I'm starting to get it now. Like just the sheer entourage of media that comes with Shohei Ohtani was quite astounding. I think he was injured at that point as a pitcher. I think he was maybe coming back. He was about ready to kind of um, come off the IL as a pitcher. He was hitting still, um, but just seeing how many, and they really didn't. It didn't really appear that they paid much attention to the rest of the game, except for when he was hitting. And the most excited that they got was he played long toss in between the two games. They were like frenzied, flocked down to the field to just watch him throw long toss. So I think that was pretty startling. And that was just kind of when I realized that this dude is like and I knew that he was different, right? But like, it was kind of the first time that I knew, okay, like this guy is a worldwide phenomenon. Like he is unlike anybody in the world in terms of how much coverage he gets. He's a literal rock star over there, and just seeing how many people were there just to cover him
Mhm.
was very surprising. And like I said, it was a doubleheader, so, and the most excited I got was him long toss in between games. Um, so yeah, and being at the park, um, 9 or 10 a.m. all day that day until, you know, 10, 11 p.m. through Scott Service's as sir and stuff like that, was pretty awesome, I would say.
Yeah, I haven't gotten the fortune to watch Otani in person, but I will say that if you ever go to the ballpark and watching those dudes do long toss is always so like fascinating. Some of those guys can literally go foul pole to foul pole with it seems
Oh
like
yeah.
minimal effort. It's you kind of really get a good idea just how far ahead those guys are. You think you were a good player in like high school and college, and you're just like you watch them and it's just ridiculous. So I guess to kind of tie off the rest of the just, talking about you and your journey, what's your, I guess, goals at this point for either this year or just even beyond that for both yourself and the Sea Level Substack and anything else?
Yeah, so I guess always my goal in just I just love talking ball, quite honestly. I guess where I'm at right now, I haven't been able to write quite as much, and I've transitioned more to it's just easier to just hop on a mic and talk. I don't have the time necessarily to write as much as I used to. Um, so I've transitioned more into audio stuff, but I guess my goal has always been to make baseball my full time thing. Um, and whether that be through coaching and my site, whether that be I was lucky enough to have my site be able to carry my income, obviously, that would be absolutely fantastic. So I guess my goal is to just kind of continue. I just want to continue what I'm doing and just keep growing it. I just kind of take it. I have a relative long term um, goal in terms of like people that I want to get on the show and how I want to kind of plan throughout the season and the things that I like to cover during the season. And then as a long-term goal, I would love to just be talking, writing, um, covering the Mariners or just baseball in general for a full-time thing. And it's like making baseball my full-time thing, I guess is my 100% overall goal. Um, and with Sea Level, just like I just really enjoy it and just continuing to see kind of I didn't expect it to be where it's at right now. I had really no expectations whatsoever, and I still don't really have a ton of expectations. So every time um, that somebody pays to read or listen to the stuff that I do, it's absolutely it it blows me away. So yeah, just continuing to do that and just ultimately kind of seeing what happens with it.
Yeah, and I really hope that you get to where you want to be at some point. I think I kind of have a weird feeling that I think this season's going to be huge for a lot of creators and people in just the Mariner space in general. I think there's a lot of hype going into it, even though it seemed for a little bit that there wasn't. But we'll actually get into something that caused a bit of hype just a couple days ago. So, yeah, like I said, it's been an interesting few days for sure. On Monday, it broke that the Mariners acquired Jorge Polanco from the Minnesota Twins in exchange for Justin Topa, Anthony Desclafani, Gabby Gonzalez, and Darren Bowen. I'm sure you've put your thoughts out there already, but we're a couple days removed from the height of the emotions. At this point, we've gotten a bit more of the full picture too. So yeah, I guess just giving your thoughts here on this show about this trade in general, and then the 2024 rosters construction as it is now.
Yeah, so I think so for me at least, like I know kind of heard some things that a move was probably going to go down, um, and I kind of pieced it together that it was going to be Polanco relatively early in the day, and just going back and looking at my, I kind of searched through my text messages, people from all the way back to 2021 about Polanco, like him being a guy that was at the top of my wish list for them. And so obviously I was really excited to see that he was a guy and I'd written about was a guy that I'd written about and talked about a lot as a really nice fit on this roster. But that move I think is what every trade, I mean, theoretically and hopefully every trade should be, right? Is like both teams are going to benefit from that trade a lot. From the Twins' perspective, they're getting an interesting starter reliever type in Darren Bowen. They're getting some back end of the rotation help, which they needed. Um, and Anthony Desclafani, and then Justin Topa, I think is probably the biggest piece in terms of the 2024 Mariners. That hurts. I think he's going to be a really good arm. I was a huge Justin Topa fan. And then obviously Gabby Gonzalez. I would say I was a little bit on the lower side on Gabby. I like Gabby a lot as a player, but overall, the package I don't think hurts a ton from the Mariners' perspective. I don't think it's a killer. I don't think anybody in that trade has the potential to be like a star or anything like that. I think there's definitely some solid players in that trade going to Minnesota. But for the Mariners' perspective, like this team just sorely needed another everyday presence in their lineup from what they've done so far this offseason, adding Garver and um, getting Mechaniger back and stuff like that. They just sorely needed an everyday guy, and getting a switch hitting second baseman who has been remarkably consistent when he's been available. It was a huge need. They needed to get an everyday bat, and getting somebody that's split neutral like Polanco, who's a switch hitter, in it for some pop, um, as well as like I've heard really good things about him in the clubhouse. I think it's just a rock solid move for the Mariners, and it's exactly kind of the type of move that when we started the soft season, I was hoping that they would make regardless of the payroll restrictions. I was hoping that they would make a move like that, and really excited for Polanco. Like I said, it's a guy that I've wanted for a long time. In terms of, I know you asked about the 2024 roster. I don't think that it's by any means a perfect roster. I still have some concerns. Obviously, on the pitching side, I don't have many concerns. I think they could use another high leverage arm, but from the pitching side, I'm not going to be too choosy. And I know I always say this on my show, like I'm not going to pretend to know the bullpen better than the Mariners do, right? So like they know what they're doing with the bullpen, so I'm not
Yeah.
worried about the pitching staff whatsoever. Just offensively, um, they run into some concerns, I think, with just like specifically. I guess my concerns are I'm not really worried about the infield, to be completely honest. Josh Rojas, I think that was an underrated acquisition. I think he's solid. I think he's an average everyday bat, which people I think people discount that. I think it's really valuable to have a guy who's just a solid average major leaguer. And I'm a fan of Luis Urias. I think he can be better than Gino offensively was last year. I don't think that's an extremely take. I think he can be somewhere what Gino was last year, or maybe even a little bit better. Um, and then with Polanco added in, I'm not really worried about the infield. I guess where I'm most concerned is just with the outfield. And I've talked about this a lot, but we know that Mitch Haniger is probably going to miss some time. You just hope that it's more 10 day IL stints instead of 60
Yeah.
IL stints. but just from the outfield perspective, it's just a little bit concerning to me that they have left-handed outfielders that are young, and I very much believe in the potential of both of those guys, and Luke Raley and Dom Canzone. But it becomes a little bit concerning when your only real right-handed option in the outfield, aside from Julio Rodriguez, right? He's in a different category.
Yeah.
But when your only right-handed option is Mitch Haniger, who does have some health concerns, it's a little bit concerning when Scott Service might be put in a position, I guess, to put him on the field a lot. Um, and I think they, quite frankly, need another guy and play all three outfield spots. I don't know where that fits in on the current roster. It's probably going to come at the casualty of somebody that's been on the roster for a while, potentially. But I think another right-handed outfielder that can protect Canzone and Rayleigh against left-handed pitching. Not that those guys can't hit left-handed pitching. I actually think that there's a decent chance that at least Canzone can. Um, but I think another right-handed outfielder, one, to get Mitch off of his feet, two, to potentially get Julio off of his feet, and somebody that can actually handle center field, because I don't know that they have that. Um, and then protecting Canzone and Rayleigh, if they do struggle against left-handed pitching, you're kind of going to be caught with their pants down a little bit, I think, especially if Haniger has to miss time. So that's kind of where I'm at with the roster. I don't think it's a bad offensive roster. I think they've certainly improved, and I think they're better than they were last year. But if I could make it a little bit better, I think a right-handed outfielder would be the spot for sure.
So do your kind of take, because I know right now it's pretty much projected like Haniger and Canzone will be that field platoon. So getting someone to kind of be that platoon for Rayleigh in the left field is probably what you think is the biggest target at this point, other than I guess a high leverage reliever.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I actually think that I don't know if this is a hot take, but I think the Canzone actually has a better chance to hit lefties than Rayleigh. I think he has a better chance to be an everyday guy than Rayleigh. I think from an overall coverage standpoint, and maybe they believe this is Dylan Moore or Sam Haggerty or Samad Taylor or something like that. Maybe they think it's one of those guys, but I think just a true outfielder that can protect those guys is really important because they don't have another right-handed guy that can do that. Not even in AAA, really. They have some infield, outfield kind of utility types that can do that hit
Mhm.
lefties well, and I'm sure that's probably what their plan as of right now is using Dylan Moore and more of that outfield and protecting those lefties. But yeah, I would say or one of Rayleigh or Canzone and sort of a not necessarily a true platoon, but kind of a timeshare in right field, and then left field for basically whichever one of those guys is performing, um, particularly against left-handed pitching. That's what I would say for the outfield right now.
Okay. If you were to, and I know this is really tough, if you were to predict what the next move might be, which I know it's impossible. Again, I feel like we never know what's going to happen next. But if you were just to predict, what do you think is like the most likely move that they do next?
I think I think they will. I think right now they're pretty content with where the roster's at. I don't know that. I don't have any of inside info that's they feel. I just feel like they are pretty content with where it's at now. However, I think market shakes out in a way where there's a guy sitting there and they have the I don't depends how much money that they're willing to go with. I think that they're going to protect themselves, specifically the baseball ops people. I think they're going to protect themselves and make sure that they have enough money to go get the upgrade at the deadline, and maybe that's getting an outfielder at the deadline to kind of fill that need. Um, And I don't know how much money they technically have to work with, but I think see them kind of sitting around and waiting. And if the calendar turns to March, nobody's paying Adam Duvall or Michael A. Taylor type of a guy. I could see them throwing 1 year and basically the AJ Pollock deal at one of those guys. I don't necessarily think that they're going to do that. I think if I had to pick a spot that they're gonna a player, it'd probably be a bullpen guy, um, a more established bullpen guy. Although it seems like they're pretty content to go into the year with the guys that they have, which they have a lot of guys with a lot of upside. So I would say probably another outfielder. I don't have any reasoning for that, but I think if there is a guy hanging around out there, like an Adam Duvall or somebody like that that hasn't gotten paid, just be like, yeah, come in, come in and lefties for us. There's a lot of lefties in this division, so they need to be really good against left-handed pitching. So I think that's probably what I would say. Um, Adam Duvall or like Robbie Grossman, somebody like that would probably be my pick.
Okay. Well, yeah, I wish I was really good at like that type of stuff, but I'm still like learning as far as when it comes to free agents and all that. So I'm not gonna like put myself out there for like what they could and could not do. But we'll get into some viewer questions, just since we only have about 9 or so minutes left. So we'll make sure we get through these. So the first one we have is
Yeah,
from
go as long as you want, man.
okay,
I got nothing going on. So
sounds good. So the first one is from MV Kush. Is Oregon starting to become more attractive in recruiting high level talent now that both big state universities, Oregon State and U of O, are nationally competitive? He did also quote your specific experience with like Linfield and whatnot in that question prior. So yeah, what do you think about Oregon on the national scale when it comes to baseball?
think I'm not gonna claim like I know this, but I mean it seems like it's developing more talent. I believe there was a first rounder last year from Jesuit High School in Portland. There was I can't remember his name right now, but there was a first rounder from Portland. Certainly during my time at Linfield, Oregon State and Oregon are have ascended greatly as being nationally relevant as baseball programs. So um, I think it's probably becoming more attractive. I don't live there. I'm not around there anymore. Um, but it certainly seems like it's not going to hurt, right? It's not going to hurt to
Mhm.
have Oregon State and Oregon being more competitive. Um, but yeah, that's all I really have on that. I don't live there anymore. Certainly, Oregon State and Oregon are ascending, and I don't think that's going to hurt.
Yeah, and I was gonna say too. At least I remember when growing up, Oregon State was always in that like College World Series contention. I think they even won it a couple times when I was growing up, and I know Adley Rutschman, I mean, is from Oregon State. So if that didn't help, then I really don't know what would. So I've always experienced at least Oregon State, and not so much U of O, as one of the big teams when it comes to college baseball. Um, and I know that like I know this isn't about college stuff, but I know they're trying to do that like Diamond Project or whatever for Portland to get a big league team.
Mhm.
Highly doubt that'll ever happen personally. I live near Portland and I could not see a major league team surviving here at all, um, to be honest with you. And I don't have any like, I guess, specific reasons why. It's kind of more of a vibes feeling. Is just when I go and drive in Portland, like I get that they have an NBA team, but you have to realize an NBA team plays, 40 something games at home each year, and that's pretty much that's the biggest team they have. I mean, you can maybe say Portland Timbers maybe, but like Providence Park probably doesn't hold very many people. It's certainly not a big league stadium amount of people. So I would say in that sense, like I couldn't see Oregon getting a major league baseball team. I also don't think that would work well splitting what I would imagine are a lot of Mariner fans, or there's some mixture of California fans too, because the kind of running joke is Californians end up moving to Oregon or Washington when they
Mhm.
don't like the weather anymore. So I would say college wise, OSU's always been there from my understanding. So that's where I'm at with that. Moving on to the next question, we have Neil. He didn't have a profile picture, so I didn't put it on this time. Should the Mariners pursue Liam Hendricks, the closer there? I don't really know if I have a strong
Um,
opinion on that necessarily. Like, I don't know if it's necessary. Is my big thing.
yeah, I don't think that. I mean, should they? Like maybe, um, but they're not gonna. Like I would imagine that the price tag that he's gonna command, they're not gonna. They won't.
Yeah,
They won't pay. Jerry DePoto and this front office, they're not paying top dollar for a reliever. Like we know that at this point, they're not. They're very comfortable in their ability to develop and find talent, and I think they have done a very very good job at that. So I don't really see any. He also has a pretty significant injury history. I don't necessarily see them. I don't think they should do that, nor will they.
I pretty much agree. He's just coming off of Tommy John, so that's already a bit shaky there. And we don't really like. I think people can maybe make the argument like it's nice to have that like closer guy, but it's especially now in today's game, it's just not like necessary for every team to have
No,
a closer. And honestly, if you were, I would personally put Brash in there. I think he would fit the mold for that closer role. Now, granted, I know you probably want him to pitch as much as possible, but I do think he's a lot more when it comes to like those big moments that you associate with the closer and those high leverage. That ninth inning, I see Brash handling that a lot better than Munoz at this point. So if we were to have a closer, that's what I would pick. I wouldn't be paying. I don't even know what the market would be. I guess what, like probably 10 something, maybe more million
yeah,
for Liam
I have no idea
Hendricks.
honestly.
And when we
First time
have,
I thought about Leon Hendricks all
yeah,
offseason is right now. So
so dude's just coming off Tommy John, and like if we were to assume that's maybe around the market, and then what they have left, which is like 15, 20 ish, then that's like maybe. That seems unlikely, especially with all the relievers they've picked up already this offseason. Um, this is a three-part question, so I didn't even bother putting a graphic. I just took a screenshot. So from Mariner Mojo, it's three questions in general. So we'll just go one by one. First one is, if it was Kepler and Polanco, what does the package look like knowing what we gave up for just Polanco?
okay, so I thought about this a little bit today. I so knowing what I know about the Twins, they prefer guys with big power. Power is their it's the thing that they always look for in prospects. They just try to get guys that thump. So I would guess that they would want Lazaro Montes to be a part of that package. Um, I would guess they would probably want two more top 15 Mariners prospects. I don't know who of another name for you, but Lazaro Montes is the one that I would say they would probably be asking for, and I don't think that they're their mind in saying that. I think you basically have the package that you there might have to be some more money shenanigans that go on there. And maybe it's like Emerson Hancock and Lazaro Montes or something like that added on to the deal that they already made. But I just knowing what I know about the Twins, I think Montes is a guy that they would definitely ask for in a package like that. They love guys that slug, so
Yeah.
that's probably the guy that I would say.
Yeah, I don't think it would take a Miller or Wu, and I mean, I think I'm basing a lot of my answer off of what like Locked On's. They literally answered this question earlier today in their mailbag. Um, but and if you, I'm going off of the information you're giving me about they want sluggers, you're probably looking at Locklear maybe might be in there, and and personally, I wouldn't have cared that much, but at the end of the day, like from what I know, Kepler's only what like a 1 year guy, and then he's a free agent. So you have to be really careful with just basically a rental bat at that point. Now Kepler would work, I think, pretty good with this roster, and I would have loved to have him, but um, they pointing it out that like he's going to be a free agent next year. I'm fine with waiting until next year and seeing if you can just get him as a free agent instead. You don't have to give anything up other than money. Now, granted, I know money isn't easy to come by when it comes to the Mariners, but yeah, that's probably what it would look like and my understanding from what I've heard. So the second one was genuine injury concern rating on a scale of 1 to 10 for guys like Garver, Haniger, Polanco, Urias. For me, it's 10. I think it's make and break. I think injuries is legitimately what is going to make this season either we're in the playoffs or not. Like and I'm not saying like one person getting injured is gonna like make it all fall apart, but I mean, like you listed, we have like four guys that are pretty injury prone. Like Urias isn't that bad. He really only had 1 year last year where he had a lot of injuries, but for guys like Garver and Haniger and Polanco to an extent, like if we lose two of those guys, we're gonna be in pretty rough shape, in my opinion.
Yeah. I guess in the spirit of the question, 1 to 10, um, I I think they'll be okay if they can stay away. Like I said earlier, if they can stay away from like the long, like 60-day IL stints, especially and of that list, it's Garver and Polanco. Those are the big ones.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they need to keep those guys in the lineup because that might be their 3-4. Um, Garver, he's got a long injury history. But I think if they can stay away from him catching, I think it's going to help him. I think they can get 100 and I'm about at a 5 for Garver. I think they can get 100. I think there's a pretty good chance that they can get more games than he's played before, which is like 107, I think is the most games he's ever played. I think they're going to get more games than that out of him, but I still think he's going to miss some time and he's going to need some days off. So I'm going to guess like 115 Garver.
Okay.
Haniger, I mean, it's got to be a 7, or it's at least a 7.
Yeah.
He's gonna miss time at some point. Um, if he doesn't, you're gonna get a really good player. Um, I think if you can get 100 games out of Mitch Haniger, that's fantastic. Polanco, I think he takes really good care of his body from everything that I've heard. And I know that leg and lower body injuries can kind of tend to stack up. Um, as you get older and they can become more prevalent and just kind of happen again and again. But I'm not super concerned with him. He's played games in the past. He hasn't always had this injury stuff. It's been the last 2 years. So maybe he's done something this offseason, and we don't know. Maybe he's done something this offseason to kind of change his training regimen to try to keep his lower body healthier. I'm probably at like a 5 with Polanco as well. And then Urias, I'm not concerned about.
Okay.
I'm like he's 26 years old. He's only had injuries 1 year. So to say that, and I talked to a guy that it covers the Brewers a couple days ago on my show, which I haven't released yet. I'll probably do that sometime in maybe even March. Um, but a lot of that, from my understanding, was just kind of like his role got changed. He wasn't performing at the very beginning, and then his role got changed, and he got hurt, and just like losing playing time and coming back from that. He's still 26 years old. He's still plenty talented. I'm not concerned about Urias' ability to stay healthy. I would say probably a 3 for Urias. I'm not super concerned about him. He's still young.
Okay. So yeah, that answers that question. And then lastly, expand on each of your dream guests to have on your respective shows. So I guess we'll go with you on that one, if you want to start that.
Yeah. Like I said earlier, like I've already had him on, but Aaron Goldsmith at any time that guy wants to, if he theoretically wanted to come on my show, I would have him on every single day if I could. He's absolutely fantastic. Um, he's a dream of mine that I've already interviewed Julio. I've already interviewed Aaron. So those guys are awesome. I would love to talk. He doesn't do a lot of interviews, but I would love to talk to JP Crawford. Um, I would love to just. He's interesting. He's an interesting guy.
Yeah.
So I'd love to just talk about anything with him. Just kind of like see where that conversation goes. He's definitely a dream. Other than that, I've been pretty fortunate. I have got to talk to a lot of people. I would love to talk to Scott Service in a longer form. Um, him and I share some things. He's a Packers fan. Him and I actually share the same birthday. Fun fact.
Nice.
Um, that's be a guy that I would love to have on. Other than that, Edgar is a guy that I've had my sights set on for a long time. Who knows if that will ever happen? But those are some guys that I guess off the top of my head that I can really think of that I've been pretty lucky and fortunate and blessed to some pretty good guests on. I've talked to Mitch Haniger and some other guys like that. So those are the guys that come to my head immediately, I guess.
Yeah, I said earlier, Aaron is Goldsmith is at the top of my list. He's number one and will be. I'm hoping that not this off season because there's one only a couple weeks away, and two, I frankly don't have the nerve to talk to someone that big yet. So maybe next off season I might look at targeting that. But he's at the top. Uh, Griffey's always been my favorite player. That's the one where it's like 100% unattainable, no chance it's ever going to happen. But like, at the end of the day, this is a dream list, so it doesn't have to be, realistic. I would say as far as current Mariners go, like obviously Julio is an easy answer, but I do have to say like I think Saucedo would be really fun to talk to. Pretty much everyone who talks about him says he's one hilarious and two has a lot of just ridiculous stories. So I would imagine he'd be a fun one on. And then
Lefty relievers are always characters. So that's always a good bet.
yeah, I don't know. I feel like I don't really know if I have any other like dream guests, I guess. Like at one point it was Ty, but then he was my first podcast episode. So I guess that's my part of being able to cross one off of the list pretty quick. So yeah, I guess I would leave it probably at Goldie, Ken Griffey Jr., Saucedo, Julio. Um, Ty France would be cool. Seems like just a really nice guy. And especially after this last season, he got a lot of crap, but it looks like he's really putting in the work. So, just in general, seems like a good guy. And we like talking to good and fun guys. So, yeah, that'll be it for me, I guess, at that point. So, we're wrapping it up here. Is there any other last things that you want to say to the audience at this point, or you can plug anything you want? The floor is yours at this point.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Anytime you want to talk ball, I'm always down. I would say, yeah, if anybody's is watching this or listening to this, that's a subscriber to my site. My subscribers this every day, but I greatly appreciate all the support. It really keeps me, I guess, striving to try to create new and fresh and fun stuff. But yeah, follow me on Twitter. It's obviously on the screen at Ben Ranieri 10. You can find my Substack at sealevelbr.com. The subscription tiers are $5 for a month, $40 for a year, and you get a Julio rookie card with the $40 for a year, which is kind of a cool perk. And I have an MVP VIP tier, which is $65 for a year. And you get to raid my autographed card collection if you join that tier. So that's another good perk. But yeah, I would just say if you're interested in subscribing or if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. And yeah, subscribe to Sea Level. That's my plug.
Yeah, I think all your descriptions or all your links will be in the description of this episode. I do recommend anyone watching to go check out your Substack. It definitely helped me a lot when I was just starting to follow the team and kind of get into what was going on. Both, I would say, your Substack and the Locked On Mariners both like very equally helped me a lot. Kind of just get that background that I needed and what was going on. So, always appreciate that. It was definitely a part of the start of the journey into where I'm at now, and
Yeah,
hopefully at some point.
I
So
appreciate that a lot.
yeah, so if you are listening, go subscribe to his Substack, go check it out. But that's going to do it for today's episode of the You Love to See a podcast. Once again, if you're on YouTube, you can leave it a like and subscribe. It's free. It helps the channel a lot more than you know. And if you're on streaming platforms, you can rate it 5 stars. You can follow the show for the next one that's going to come. But yeah, I appreciate you watching or listening, whatever you're doing. And I will see you next time.